Dialing *170# option 3 and follow the process. Or simply dial *170*311# for a superb airtime purchase experience. You enjoy 100% bonus airtime anytime you recharge yourself with MTN Momo. Keep on talking with that 100% feeling. So, what are we doing today?
MTN. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Midday News. The news is live on Joy 99.7 FM here in Accra and Kumasi. We're on Love 99.5 FM. A number of affiliates across Ghana's 16 regions. We're on Amenuveve FM in Apawu, Kaleo FM in Akachi, Dreams FM in Bolgatanga, and Sun City Radio in Keta. We're live on Twitter Spaces. We're on Facebook. We're on myjoyonline.com. The Midday News is sponsored by Duraplus Ghana Limited, producers of quality PVC pipes and water tank. Where Duraplus goes, water flows. This afternoon, with potential doom so looming in less than 3 years, government has directed the Electricity Company of Ghana to renegotiate power purchase agreement under new guidelines that discourages the take-or-pay regime.
Because your demand is growing, year on year, your excess capacity is reducing. And so ECG takes the view that, look, in 2026, 2027, there may be the need for us to add some capacity.
A former chief executive of the VRA says Ghana has been poor in her negotiations for cheaper sources of energy, with over $6 billion debt outstanding in the energy sector.
We have not ever followed a competitive least cost procurement plan that says over the next 5 to 10 years, this is the amount of power we need. We'll take the least cost and go from there. Almost every project we've done has been on an ad hoc basis.
Meanwhile, the NDC says the World Bank country director did a poor job in concluding that power purchase agreements done in the past could be partly blamed for the state of the economy.
And I expected the IMF country director to do a good job. Because when you say it is too expensive, relative to what?
Also this afternoon, school feeding caterers reject 1 cedi 20 pesos proposed increment for cost per meal as they prepare to hit the road in demonstration on Wednesday.
This 1 cedi 20 pesos cannot provide any nutritious food for them. So they should rather go and then think of something good for us, because this 1 cedi 20 pesos, there is not enough.
Also this afternoon, Savannah Regional Security Council assures it is working with stakeholders to resolve local conflicts as pressure mounts on government to attend to displaced residents with no access to food and shelter.
Because of the what is happening, it is very difficult for us to put the two factions together. And so it is, we are trying to make sure that we deal with these factions in our own.
We have sports.
We'll tell you about a key concern raised by a former Black Stars captain on Ghana's recently named 24 players for this month's AFCON qualifier.
And much later, we focus on Ghana Potholes exhibition. We'll bring you the second episode and tell you why government may not cover craters in the middle of the road. And much later in Cues and Lyrics, the Mighty has fallen from the competition, becoming the 4th contestant to drop the microphone in the Joy Prime Cues and Lyrics. That and more here on the Midday News. I am Emefa Apawu. This is your home of independent, fearless and credible journalism. And there's danger ahead for power generation in the next 3 to 4 years, as most of the independent power plants will go off. The result will be doomsday unless immediate steps are taken to renegotiate for extension of the power plants or build new ones. Debt in the energy sector today stands at $6.2 billion, a development that threatens the country's economy. Deputy Energy Minister Andrew Ejapamesa confirms to Joy News that ECG has been tasked to renegotiate contracts with power plants nearing expiration, but under a new regime that discourages take-or-pay.
Further accumulation of debt would mean that have we signed new contracts that then brings about that debt, or this is the situation that the contracts that we contracted in the past has brought us to. New AXA transaction is not a take or pay. It's a take and pay. Save that there is a commitment to dispatch about 40% of their capacity year on year. And also, the tariff was reduced from the 13 cents or so to under 10. Yes, we've had excess capacity over the past 5, 6, 7 years. But is it static? Obviously not. So because your demand is growing, year on year, your excess capacity is reducing. And so ECG takes the view that, look, in 2026, 2027, there may be the need for us to add some capacity. And so if AXA had no decommissioning provisions in their transaction and the facility is here, can we renegotiate under the new guidelines that have been issued by the Ministry of Energy to the effect that going forward, any new power plants that is coming into Ghana would not be on a take or pay basis? There will be no government guarantees, no PCOAs, and that we're going to buy energy.
Well, former Chief Executive of the Volta River Authority, Kweku Awotri, says the country has been poor in negotiating better deals in the energy sector.
These emergencies, some of them at least, are no longer emergencies. They've been around for 5, 10 years, and they may end up being around for another 5 to 10 years. So I do think that the take-or-pay gets a bad rap, and it's not always understood. I don't disagree with the World Bank in the sense that some of them are expensive. I mean, it's unlikely that any investor who brings $500 million will not want to have some guarantee for getting paid back. I don't think you can fault any investor for that. And that's where a lot of these take-or-pays come in. But I think where our problem has been as a country is we have not ever followed a competitive least cost procurement plan that says, over the next 5 to 10 years, this is the amount of power we need, bid in, we'll take the least cost and go from there. Almost every project we've done has been on an ad hoc basis.
But the foundation for the debt in the energy sector is mostly blamed on the mini contracts signed for the independent production of power between 2012 and 2024 during the Doomsday era under former President Mahama. The World Bank Country Director Pierre-Frank Laporte says the contracts were too expensive.
Is those contracts that you've signed, those PPAs, are just too expensive. Too expensive, and the kind of PPAs you sign is take-or-pay, which means Ghana is paying to the electricity that is not even being produced. Yeah. You have double capacity. Yes, over time, usage will improve, so your excess capacity will go down. But the fact is, in the last few years, Ghana entered into some PPAs that were the wrong types, in our view, and at the wrong rates, at the wrong prices, and today you are paying dearly for it. And also, it has an impact because today we're talking of clean energy. Yeah. Many companies want to come to Ghana to do, solar and all. Yeah, government wants probably the best thing to do, but you are still caught up with those that you have to pay because you are tied up in these contracts. So you will take new ones, you will pay them, you have to pay.
That's the World Bank Country Director, Frank Pierre Laporte. Well, the opposition NDC is fighting back, accusing Mr. Laporte of doing a poor job. Let's bring in the Member of Parliament for Pru East in the Bono East region. And he is also the former Power Minister, Dr. Kwabena Donkor, joining us. We are grateful for your time here on the Midday News. So let me ask if you accept that most of the power purchase deals you signed were too expensive. The reason for the huge debt in the sector that we are faced with currently.
I am quite surprised that the World Bank Country Director is making that assertion. First of all, let me give you an example. The Amere power plant is the cheapest thermal plant in terms of tariff in Ghana today. The levelized capital recovery of 0.02377 is the lowest of all the power plants. And the tariff, you see, because that was a boot agreement, the capital recovery was loaded into the first 5 years. The plant has a 20-year the power purchase agreement was over a 20-year period. From year 6, capital recovery was 0. So when you levelize over the 20-year period, it is the cheapest, cheaper than Tico, cheaper than Southern Asogli, cheaper than all the existing plans. So for somebody to make a blanket statement is unfortunate. If you also take the Jacobson plant was cheap, the tariff was cheaper than some existing plants of the day. And so the country director should come again. The country director missed an opportunity. The missed opportunity has to do with our exchange rate. Remember, power is a very dollar-dependent sector. It's so dollar-dependent. And if you take the exchange rate on 1st January 2017, the exchange rate was 4 cedis, 1.4 pesos to the dollar on 2nd July 2017. Today, the exchange rate is 11 cedis, 193 pesos to the dollar.
But with
Remember,
all that notwithstanding, Mr. Kwabena Donko, we may say that is a blanket statement, but there is a call for a review of the deals to ensure value for money. Do you support that, knowing where we are now when it comes to the energy sector?
Look, President Mahama commissioned PwC in 2016 to do a value for money audit of Ameri. He came out with flying colors. Any government can commission a value for money audit, and I believe it will be a step in the right direction. However, I thought I heard my colleagues from the ministry saying that the AXA plant now has to meet new requirements. Even in the new AXA contract, there's a 40% take or pay embedded in that new contract. Remember, with the AXA plant was an emergency plan for 5 years, and therefore capital recovery was loaded onto the first 5 years.
Okay,
yes.
But Mr. Donko, would you say that the World Bank country director, knowing the stature and the status, would speak or express an opinion without proper research being done?
Well, I'm just pointing out that he did not do proper research. Either he did not do proper research, or as is usual with the World Bank, a government in power does no wrong. It is only when the government exists that the World Bank comes out with all sorts of misgivings about their performance.
Okay, well, but as it stands now, there's a warning that the country may slip back into doom so in 2016, 2026, 2027 due to the generational shortfall. What can be done now, in your opinion?
You see, there was the expectation after 2015 that our simple cycle plants, e.g. Contema plant, e.g. Senate plant, e.g. TT2PP, etc., will be turned into combined cycle plants. When they are turned into combined cycle plants, we add capacity without an extra fuel cost. For example, Senate and TT2PP, they sit in the same yard, the same Angel turbine.
Well, we'll have to leave it here for now. And that's Dr. Kwabena Donko, former power minister, raising concerns about comments made by World Bank Country Director Frank Pierre Laporte, raising concerns about some of the mini contracts signed for the independent production of power between 2012 and 2024. Let's move away from the energy sector and the National School Feeding Caterers Association. They've rejected a proposed 20 pesos increment on the current 1 cedi cost per meal for school pupils. pupils, caterers, and other school feeding program declared a nationwide strike in April, demanding payment of all arrears and an increase of 3 cedi 50 pesos in the cost per meal. Addressing the challenges at Meet the Press on Sunday, the Gender Minister Lariba Zuwaira Abudu said the ministry has proposed a 1 cedi 20 pesos cost per meal effective 2023. We'll get to hear from the caterers shortly, but first listen to the minister who says the ministry is yet to accept their proposal.
In 2023, the cost per meal, per child, per day has been proposed as 1 cedi 20 pesos as we stand now. 2023 academic year, the cost per meal, per child, per day has been proposed as 1 cedi 20 pesos as we stand now.
But National Secretary of the School Feeding Caterers Association, Dorothy Ofori Sapong, says the amount is woefully inadequate.
We don't understand why the government is saying that he cannot pay more than 1 cedi 20 pesos because it is a grant by the IMF or World Bank. Is it not World Bank grant? And so I think there is a fee on that that figure. There is a figure for each child. So why is it difficult for them? It's a grant. And so if that grant keeps coming, then I don't see why we cannot afford paying 2 cedis for each child.
Now, let me take you to the Savannah region, and the traditional council there is working with interest groups to bring feuding factions to the negotiation table following clashes in Lukula and Mimpasem communities last week. The government has come under intense pressure to address the confrontation between the factions there, which resulted in the death of one and the injury of others. Despite attempts by the administration and a combined security force to preserve peace, the conflict has yet to be resolved. We can hear from the Nadmo Savannah Regional Director Mohammed Tohir, who says they are assessing the situation to find rest for displaced residents.
Currently, we are doing our assessment. Now that few of them are returning back to Lukula, because currently there is, we have police presence, heavy police presence protecting life and property in that community. So as we speak now, it's not all the affected persons that have even returned to the community. So we are still doing the assessment. Until we finish with the assessment, that we know the total number of people affected, then we'll communicate to the highest authority.
Let me bring in our Savannah regional correspondent, Isaac Nonya. We're grateful for your time. So, Isaac, you've been interacting with the regional minister, Sahid Mohazu Jibril. What's he been telling you?
Yes, regional minister is stating the fact that CAM has restored the fiction area, Lukula and Daboyata in particular. He also said that the two regional security councils, Savannah and that of Northeast, are engaging the two factions. I mean, the Janga Traditional Council and that of Wasipe Traditional Council, to see how they can bring a final resolution to the evening.
The two regional coordinating councils are engaging the various factions. You know, we have two factions. The Waspe traditional area, which is in the Savannah region, and the Janga traditional area, which is in the Northeast region. So as we speak, because of the what is happening, it is very difficult for us to put the two factions together. And so it is, we are trying to make sure that we deal with these factions in our own regions. Okay. Then from there, we're now going to have a joint exec meeting. That's just scheduled just this Wednesday to see the way forward.
Now, Isaac, we know that 21 out of the 107 suspects arrested by police have been charged. Tell us more.
Yes, they were charged for the destruction and rioting in town. That led to a destruction of the police vehicles. And they pleaded not guilty. And their lawyers, their counsels were able to ask for bail, and the court granted that to them.
That's my colleague Isaac Nonya, our Savannah regional correspondent. We turn our attention to politics now, and the opposition NDC insists it has uncovered a plot by the EC and the governing NPP to insert the name of an unqualified candidate into their Synod voters register. The party's communications officer, Sami Jemfi, was the first to make the allegation, but the EC has since described it as untrue. Dr. Sribo Kweku is Director of Electoral Services.
I think the statement settles everything because we know we have not received any letter. We know we are not doing illegal. So we will put what is there available to everybody to hear or listen. So that if anybody has any other contrary to the person comes up with it, we will continue to do what is right.
Well, the NDC is not backing down on this allegation. Mustafa Gbande is Deputy General Secretary.
Article 94 is a mother law. Article 94 establishes the criteria under which you are qualified to contest as a member of parliament. And that Charles Opoku has all of those characteristics, except to say that he is not a voter in Asset North, and that the law CI 127, Regulation 22, establishes that he ought to have transferred his vote, and that as we speak, he is not transferred his vote. And the Electoral Commission is trying, he requires 42 days. And the number of days we have to go for this by-election is less than 40 days.
Mustafa Gbande is Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. Still on politics, there are concerns that the age-old practice of chiefs endorsing candidates and political parties may be far from over. This comes in the wake of a Supreme Court judgment that explained that chiefs cannot endorse candidates or their parties, but are allowed to endorse policies or comment on them. Political scientist Dr. Kwame Asasante believes chiefs may well find a way around it.
Judgments will help us to appreciate a situation and be able to deal with a problem that is on hand. But as society changes, you realize that sometimes we need to go back to the court again and then see if there are other problems. What I see is that there's no doubt that the judgment has done something that is in line with the Constitutional Review Committee report. I can also see that one day we may also go to the Supreme Court again for another interpretation. Let me give you something that I've scribbled down. If that one happens to be come out with the mouth of a chief saying that your government is the first to have given us road, potable water, and electricity.
Exactly.
I and my people will never forget this gesture. Is it endorsement? I am praising. I have not endorsed anybody.
Well, Professor of Law Kwejua Piejetua shares this concern as well.
The chief, when he makes a final decision, is final. You cannot more or less challenge it. So where the chief is seen to be active politically in terms of endorsing a candidate or endorsing a particular political party, I think there's a possibility of influencing who a citizen of that community should vote for, and how that person or how that vote should be made. And so in that respect, I respect the decision of the Supreme Court.
Well, President of the Volta Regional House of Chiefs, Togbe Teprehodo IV, meanwhile says chiefs will be sensitized on the judgment to change the trend.
I think first of all, it will be a question of more and more education as to the various scenarios which could come up and what it amounts to, as to whether or not that amounts to active politics or it is not. As leaders of communities need to be guarded in what they say. And I think that is what the Supreme Court is saying.
Paramount Chief of the Amfuega Traditional Area and President of the Volta Regional House of Chiefs, Togbe Teprehodo IV, they're speaking on the probe. Taking us on a quick break here on the Midday News, live on Joy 99.7 FM here in Accra, in Kumasi on Love 99.5 FM. The Midday News is sponsored by Duraplus Ghana Limited, producers of quality PVC pipes and water tank. Where Duraplus goes, water flows. And with potential doom so looming in less than 3 years, government has directed the Electricity Company of Ghana to renegotiate power purchase agreement and the new guidelines that discourages the take or pay regime. We've been also hearing from the NDC as they reject the World Bank country directors report that they did a poor job in concluding that power purchase agreements done in the past could be partly blamed for the state of the economy. They have concerns about Pierre Laporte, concerns that he's raised in that interview on PM Express Business Edition. When we return from the break, we have sport, and in our second episode of Ghana Portals exhibition, we'll tell you why government may not cover craters in the middle of the road.
The bomb price is I said, and I'm a
Imagine say water wake up at dawn. You know both. You know chop. Where it vanish for your area for 2 weeks. You not get one drop safe inside your tank.
Hey.
Haja, our life was in dangerous. Only our neighbor gets water with water tank.
Water tank?
Yes, water tank. Mamma mia, that water tank gets meter for checking water level. That water tank be fine past Kumasi Selenium. That water tank be tough like Ghana Army. That water tank, they carry water pepe, so say some no go left inside the supply tank. What a tank! As my boss, Mr. Poncho, go talk.
Beautiful, durable, with water level indicator and accurate volume of water. Water tank. What a tank! By Duraplast.
Many thanks for staying with us. Time for sports.
Thank you very much, Emefa. Now, Ghana could secure qualification for next year's Africa Cup of Nations with a win against Madagascar. The Black Stars play away to their opponents in Antananarivo on June 18 as Chris Hughton eyes his second win as Ghana's head coach. He will oversee the team's preparation, which begins in 7 days, having already named 24 players for the upcoming game. The squad includes inform Mohamed Kudus and Joseph Pintel, but Ghana's all-time leading scorer, Samoa Jan, is not entirely convinced.
This later stages of the league, you saw players from dropping, which is a bit worry, So, but when you come to the national team, it's a different thing altogether. And I'm sure they've played for quite a long time, and then they know how to just do everything together. Everything is okay, but I'm a bit worried about this recent form that our players are having. And as I said, the national team it's a different thing. They can come and prove themselves. And when you talk about Chris has done what he had to do. It depends on the players, it depends on the management and the support from Ghanaians to just deliver.
So that's Ghana's all-time top scorer and former Black Stars captain, Asamoah Gyan. Back to you, Emefa.
Thank you very much. I don't know what the pothole situation is in your area, but it's time for the second episode of Ghana Potholes Exhibition, and Jojo Kobna will tell us why government may not cover craters in the middle of the road.
A sudden sound of pothole symphony. When your vehicle joins the chorus, then be rest assured that a hole will be created in your bank account. Driving on pothole-riddled streets means you have to constantly drift off your lane. From afar, you start looking like a drunk, needlessly turning the steering wheel. If you're wondering why the government is not fixing your potholes,
I pray for heavy rains so that the road would develop more potholes. I'll then come and fix them. I pray that government neglects the road. That is the only way I will get money for my daily upkeep.
with so much passion fueled by hunger, he sometimes dangerously approaches drivers and sometimes weaves in between vehicles, begging for coins to put food on the table for his family. For 3 years, he has been filling these potholes with soil on the Iran Clinic stretch, not only for the driving comfort of drivers and passengers, but to eke out a living.
Meanwhile, the Acting Director General of the National Road Safety Authority, Engineer David Osafo-Adonting, has also added that the dualizing roads will eliminate head-on collisions.
Roads that are constructed, that provide for pedestrian use, that provide for cycling and motorcycles, that provide for lanes and facilities that will ensure that we do not have head-on collisions like we are getting in recent times. And this is where we come talking about dualization all the time. And I'm happy that we have evidence to show that if we have dualized roads, we completely eliminate head-on collisions.
That's Engineer David Osafo-Adonting, the Acting Director General of the National Road Safety Authority. We've been hearing from building consultant also, who says that we have a role to play in all this. But let's do cues and lyrics now. And the Mighty has fallen from the competition, becoming the fourth contestant to drop the microphone. He failed to impress the judges with his vocals when he performed his rendition of To Be a Man by Dax. Here are excerpts for Week 8's competition.
And it happens that Mighty
you are the one who is leaving the show tonight.
Listen from the valley. People doesn't understand me a wallet.
You have a voice. Sing with it. This chatting business has got to stop.
See a brother, give me blow, give me blow, give me blow, blow, blow.
Wanna McDonald's and wanna veggie altitude. I'm a survivor, gonna make it. I'm gonna survive. Da 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 da. Show jolly she onga ebae.
Alarm bang, see so. Alarm bang, hey. Alarm bang, see so. Alarm bang, hey. Mosa. Alarm bang.
Me now make you break my hand, no. If you can't love me now, don't love me later. When my later is much greater.
Cues and lyrics. Bring on the music.
Remember to catch the repeat of the show at 11 a.m. on Joy Prime. Cues and Lyrics is sponsored by Syntex Tanks and the Ghana AIDS Commission. Cues and Lyrics, bring on the music. And that's how we end today's edition of the Midday News. There's more when you log on to myjoyonline.com. Encourage acquisition measures of banks and NBFIs if needed. IMF tells government that and more on myjoyonline.com. I am Emefa Apawu. Living Word with Pastor Mensah Otabil is up next. Have a good afternoon.